Hey guys, Richie Mars here. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars about John Cena. Very excited for this one. Just a quick note, we had to stop and start this recording a couple of times, just a little hiccup for the recording stuff. So you might hear some audio switch ups here and there, but not too big a deal. I'm very excited about this episode. So thank you so much for joining me, and let's go throw it to me in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am the humble, gracious host, Richie Mars. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode. And we took a little bit of a break, took a little bit of a baby break for a week. And, I wanted to come back strong. We had Ebby last week. We had the whole discussion about the Bella twins and their impact on wrestling. So we got to transition to a little bit more. We got to transition. And I was thinking, I was racking my brain around Bella's, who was impacted by the Bellas a lot. And John Cena came to mind. John Cena, of course, announced his retirement tour for 2025. It is a very emotional time for those who grew up with him, myself included, and my guest as well. She is part of the Familia. She is also a big John Cena fan. I'm here, of course, with the positive light of the group. It is Michaila the Ring Queen. Michaila, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be doing this episode, and I'm so excited that I get to do it with you.
And the feeling's mutual, and I'm not sure if you guys know this because Michaela, like every time a new episode of not only this podcast drops, but like this is like very early on in my social media TikTok career kind of deal. She would be the one of the only ones to post stuff on her story, repost stuff of my videos to get the more traction, and just to just post, and they're just she's just like a big fan of just like helping other people out, and she helped me out tremendously, and I can't be more thankful or grateful for that. So Michaila, I really do thank you for doing all of that and just kind of promoting me out there, because this whole wrestling TikTok journey, this whole podcast journey, it's a up and down road. Sometimes you'll find some people who are followers who either try to tear you down, not try to build you up, but you've been one of those who are constantly and consistently just supporting me, and I can't thank you enough for it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I genuinely have always really liked your content and your podcast. It's You're very intelligent, and the way that you talk about wrestling is in, I guess that's how I'm gonna put it, a very intelligent way because you're really knowledgeable. We call you the wrestling encyclopedia, because you know so much stuff that like my brain wouldn't even be able to store.
Mhm.
And so I genuinely enjoy everything that you put out and that you do, and so I'm fangirling a little bit because I'm really excited.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate it. But Michaela, before we get into our topic of John Cena, plug yourself. Do like a Cliff Note version of your wrestling fandom and just what you're doing now, content wise.
So I am Michaila the Ring Queen. One I 10th, I'm pretty sure now, of the Familia. And I've been a wrestling fan for about as long as I can remember. I was thinking about it the other day because I knew we were doing this, so I was trying to kind of rack my brain as to when I first like started watching it, and it was around '02, '03, and it was some random match. I don't remember exactly what it was. I tried to find it. I went through the YouTube archives trying to see if I could rack my brain, but I couldn't remember it. But I just remembered it was a big arena, a big stadium, and there was two people in a ring and they were going at it, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And so it from there I just kind of, I didn't get to watch it a lot because I was raised in the mountains and I didn't have power all the time, and it wasn't really possible for me to always watch it. But I did have friends who had, cable and stuff like that. And so when I would be able to go to their houses, they would let me watch it even though they weren't really interested in it. So it was just something that, as much as I got to watch it, I just ingested as much of it as possible. Because I don't really know what it was about it. I think as an adult, I've kind of figured out that it's like the pageantry of it, and I really do like the wrestling that they do physically in the ring. It's the way that they're able to do it without hurting each other is really interesting to me. And I didn't know that they weren't hurting each other when I was younger. I just thought they were, full on throwing people off of ambulances, all the stuff. So as an adult, I've kind of pinpointed because I've always liked musical theater and that kind of stuff, and the drama of the storyline. It's just all like a perfect little concoction of everything that I love in one. So, um, it's yeah, it's one of my favorite things. And I'm a mom now, so my ability to do a lot of my other hobbies like reading and hiking and stuff that I was able to do before I had children that I had to take care of every day, it's a lot easier for me to be invested in wrestling because I can just turn it on and watch it while I'm doing dishes or making food or packing a lunch. It's easy for me to still keep up with it and stay current with it and be able to focus on it because it doesn't require me to stare at TV
Yeah,
for too long.
yeah, wrestling is a very like big content separation nowadays where it's like you could plug and play it wherever you can go because there's so much wrestling content out there. But as we
Yeah.
rewind back to John Cena's beginning 2002 to 2003, WWE was the only game in town. So there was little to grab on a national stage and a national scale. And I
Yeah.
remember if you didn't want to watch Raw or SmackDown, the only other two choices were Heat and Velocity, which of course were WWE products. But
Yeah.
when John Cena first came in, he had the trunks, the boots, of like colors of different like sports towns that they were in. If they were in New York, it would be Mets colors, it would be
Yeah.
Knicks colors. So just like things like that, trying to connect with the audience. And that is a good way to connect, but it's not anything that could be permanent if you didn't have a set character. And this ruthless aggression character, John Cena admit himself that it was a failure because he didn't really capitalize on it. He was so too focused on the wrestling portion of that, the moves, and not much of the character to enhance those moves in order for the crowd to connect with. What do you remember this version of John Cena like when he was first starting out, or remember like watching back and seeing the contrast of John Cena, what he would be known as now, and just him starting out?
I do. I remember he had a match with I it was Test. I'm pretty sure it was Test.
Mhm.
I thought that it was the first one that I had seen was with Rhino, but I had gone back and I had rewatched it, and that I remember that one, but it wasn't the one that I was thinking of. I had watched the one that he had did with Tess, and that was the one that I had remembered because I remember that Tess was blonde and Rhino's not blonde. So I was, watching it back, and he really didn't have, like a whole lot to him, especially back then. It wasn't. I can't really remember or pinpoint what it was about him that I had paid attention to, other than the fact that I thought that he was attractive and that he was really good in the ring. And so it was kind of like a mix of the two. But he didn't. I don't remember him saying a whole lot. I don't remember him speaking a whole lot. I don't really remember like there being a defining aspect of John Cena that was, you know, that just called to me. And he was still kind of like back and forth using the name Prototype back then too. So like it was like he was still trying to also figure out like what he was and who he wanted to be. and you could tell that, especially in the ring, like it was, he looks nervous. He looks really nervous, and like, he's not 100% sure of himself because like sometimes he messes up, and I mean everyone messes up in the ring, but it's like, kind of like a pattern of, as he's getting into the middle of it, he kind of stops what he's doing, and kind of looks like he's lost, and it's, he you could just tell that he wasn't completely sure of
Mhm.
himself.
And what's very crazy is that John said that he debuted in WWE late June, and then before in December there would always be post Christmas cuts, of the roster, and was informed around like September, like that fall, that he would be getting his release at Christmas cuts unless he changed his character to get over, which is crazy to me because it's like if you look at that from like late June, July to then September, that's not like a long period of time that you can get your feet wet within
Yeah,
WWE, which really showed that the turnaround, they were trying to churn out all these guys to be like, hey, if you're not connecting with the crowd, or if it's like you're not right politically with anybody back there, you're going away. And
yeah,
it's interesting that that initial panic like caused the Doctor of Thugonomics character, because Stephanie McMahon was listening on a tour bus of the SmackDown roster battle rapping, and John Cena, who was experienced with battle rapping, was like, all right, let's try this, because when Stephanie McMahon's like, hey, do you want to try this for XYZ, and he's like, I had two options, and you either say no, you're out the door, or yes, or you could have a chance. And he said yes. And the Doctor of Thugonomics was born, with all these raps. He would now not wear the same colors of the sports teams of the hometown arena, but instead their rival. So if he was in Boston, he'd be wearing Yankee stuff. If he was in Lakers, probably like Boston Celtics stuff. All
yeah.
these different kind of color combinations, and no longer were he would wear boots for a little bit, but then he switched to the pumps, and then he switched to, instead of the wrestling ring gear, he switched to jean shorts.
The short,
The jorts,
the
yeah, which
infamous
are
short.
very famous, and apparently there are only two people in this world who could wear jorts, and that's John Cena and Kevin Smith. So those are
I,
one and two.
you know, And I really like those shorts on him. They're his staple. I'm really sad that he said when he retires that they're gonna go away, because I love his shorts.
Hmm.
I love that he wrestles in shorts. I don't know why, because I don't wear shorts.
Hmm.
I've never worn shorts, but like it's it's such a John Cena thing for him to be wearing shorts. Like I just automatically associate John Cena with shorts now.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure everyone does.
Yeah, and that's exactly why he wanted to do something different, because if you remember the Halloween episode, he was Vanilla Ice, and that's where the rapping Doctor Thugonomics character was
The
born.
awful purple fruit.
And apparently he had two choices. It was either Vanilla Ice or Eminem, and he said Vanilla Ice was his choice because he wanted to be as outlandish as possible. Go back to the character era of WWE, which is what they were doing at that time, where it's like you need to have a set character in order to connect with the audience and for people to care and put you in interesting scenarios as well. So there was a
Yeah.
couple of like false starts with John Cena. Like, he had his running buddy B2, who was Bull Buchanan, and you could see his
Yeah.
son Brooks Jensen on NXT right now. And then
Oh yes, I
yeah,
remember. I heard that the other day.
yeah, so that didn't last permanently, and then it was Red Dog, who later became Rodney Mack, and they appeared on like one SmackDown together. And then John Cena was back being a solo guy, and he was supposed to have a battle rap at his first WrestleMania 19, against I believe it was Fabulous, the rapper. Uh,
Yes,
and
yes,
they
I'm
backed
pretty
out last
sure.
minute, and then they did like a Sunday Night Heat pre-show of him battle rapping against like cardboard cutouts, and like their faces were superimposed on Mike Myers and Mini Me from Austin Powers, and I was like,
Oh my god,
yeah.
it was cringy, but it was cringy in like the best ways.
Mm-hmm.
It, you know, he was like a I always say that like even when John Cena was a heel, he wasn't really a heel because like people booed him, but he was so funny. Like he wasn't you couldn't really take him seriously
Mm-hmm.
as a bad guy. Like I liked him, very much as a heel and him trying to be a bad guy, but it's not something that you could take very serious because his battle raps were just so terrible.
There were a
I
couple where it's
love
just
him
like
to
I
death.
watch now. I'm just like, yeah, he'd probably get canceled today, and that's
Really,
just the big thing about John Cena and the Doctor of Thugonomics character. It was so outlandish. It was so
yes,
out there that a lot of people could try to connect with it. And when they were connecting with it, because it was a part of the culture at the time that was happening within the US, and then you have all of that just being that outlandish character, it really does put in perspective. If you're different and you're a good kind of different, then sky's the limit for the career. So, with all that being said of John Cena and his outlandish character, do you think because his character was so over the top and it was different from what WWE was producing at the time, that was the main reason he got over? Or do you think it was a little bit more than that?
I think that that was a big part of it because I don't think that people genuinely liked him. I did, but I got made fun of for liking John Cena for most of the time that I can remember from middle school on because I just think everyone thought he was really corny is what it was. And he was. That was the point, you know what I mean? But I think that it was like, oh well that's lame because he's so corny and they all like Triple H and they were like that's like, that's a bad guy is kinda like what it was like
Mhm,
is the gist that I was given basically. Is like he wasn't a real bad guy and so because of that they didn't think he was tough and so like they didn't really like him. So I think it was a lot because
mhm,
of it was just really different. And you know what I mean?
mhm,
People like things that are different. It's it's a known fact. And you do get tired of the same
mhm,
type of wrestlers over and over again. You know, the big guys that are just big
mhm.
guys that do big guy things. It's good to have a little bit of variety in there,
And
I think.
variety we did get with John Cena in the year 2003 because he was a part of a lot of top programs. Like he had his first WWE Championship match against Brock Lesnar because he was kind of Brock Lesnar's TV feud while Brock was preparing for Kurt Angle, and Kurt Angle had the neck issue stuff. And you had John Cena and The Undertaker at Vengeance. You had John Cena and Kurt at No Mercy. You had John Cena and Eddie Guerrero at the Parking Lot Brawl for the U.S. Championship. And then you had John Cena and Chris Benoit
Yeah.
multiple times, and majority of the matches John Cena lost, and I can only imagine what the wrestling community online would say to that, during that time, because oh gosh, he's so buried, right? He got buried by each and every one of them. But but like, which is my favorite term of
Very,
all time because everyone doesn't use it correctly. But with John Cena, it was a very big
no.
learning curve to see where it's like, all right, this guy has potential to be the face because the field was wide open when Austin and Rock were no longer full time talent. Brock was there for a little bit, and then Brock left for NFL. So then it was like open season to see who can potentially be that guy. I think a lot of people were looking at Randy Orton, but Randy Orton was very young at the time, and that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody
Yeah.
who's 23, 24 at this point. And John Cena kind of had a
Yeah.
little bit of things on lock where it's like he would say yes to everything. He had the CD coming out, he had a lot of different adventures. He had the Marine movie, which we're not going to talk about right here. Uh, but he had a lot of different ventures where he was the ultimate company guy, and that's what really helped him. And when he was heel throughout the majority of 2003, people would consider his babyface turn to be at that Survivor Series in 2003, with John Cena joining Team Angle against Team Lesnar. Now, I'm gonna tell you a little story right here because this is where I remember the most of my wrestling fandom. I'm like, all right, John Cena's pretty cool, but apparently the SmackDown before was heavily edited. And the reason for that is there was a backstage segment with Kurt Angle and his, like, I guess his first lieutenant, Chris Benoit. I'm going to say his name because that's what happened in history, despite, the stuff he did. And the story was
Yeah.
their teammate Farouk was injured, so they needed to name a replacement. Team Lesnar originally were looking at John Cena. John Cena denied them, and then he got attacked by Team Lesnar. So Kurt Angle recruited John Cena as a part of the team. And Chris Benoit said if John Cena were to do one thing to screw this team up, he would answer to him, and then Chris was going to come after Kurt. So the finish of the television show was John Cena and Chris Benoit in a tag match against, I believe, Big Show and Brock. It could have been Big Show and Morgan, but I think that was the team Big Show and Brock. And the finish was John Cena uses the no wait, it was Big Show and A Train, I think. But John Cena used the chain, which he would use at that time, and a pin Big Show, and then
You can walk on it.
the show goes off the air with John Cena walking away. Now, it was kind of weird because you didn't really see anything else there. You just saw John Cena walk in the back, having a scowl on his face, and off the air we go to Survivor Series 2003. So this was back in the time where SmackDown was taped, and the original finish was apparently they wanted John Cena to be like a Stone Cold type of character, where it's just like DTA, don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
So after they won the match, John Cena hit the FU onto Benoit, and then it's like, oh, which side is he on? This kind of thing, and that would pretty much set the tone of like, okay, he's not a good guy, he's not a bad guy, he's just John Cena. So the reason why they cut it from the initial feed was the live audience didn't react like well to it, in that it was a lot of ambivalence where it's like, what, we're ready for this face turn, and he does that to Benoit, who was a very big popular act at the time. So we could have gotten a little
Yeah.
bit of a more different John Cena, and I'm glad WWE kind of realized the mistake they would have had on their hands.
Well, and I mean, I wouldn't have been opposed to it. I've always wondered what like a stone cold, angry John Cena heel would be. I just
Mhm.
don't think it would be really good. He's he's just not. He doesn't give stone. He doesn't give
Mhm.
hardcore heel. He just doesn't. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's good to know your strengths and it's good to know your
So
weaknesses.
so we go into one of his probably big strengths is WrestleMania 20. He wins the U.S. title off Big Show, hitting Big Show with not one but two FUs or attitude adjustments, depending on when you join the fandom. And he has a run with the U.S. Championship, works with Booker T, all that fun stuff, and then it builds to John Cena, JBL, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to mention the Carlito nightclub stabbing storyline, even though it's like really funny to me. Uh,
It's so funny. I really need I love what he's doing right now, but if he could break away just from Judgment Day just for a little bit to go against John Cena one more time before he retires, I would be fine
it
with
was probably
that.
like one of my favorite like mini feuds, where it's just kind of like because
Yeah.
Carlito's debut was shocking, where it's like he debuts, he had the vignettes, and then his first match is against John Cena for the U.S. Championship, and then John loses to Carlito in this like big shock. And the funny funny thing about that is John Cena took off time to go film the Marine, and then that's what happened there.
Yeah.
And originally the person that was scheduled to star in the Marine was Stone Cold, and his agent's like, no, this is not going to be a good movie. And Stone Cold is like, he's like, I don't even have a movie career,
No.
so is what it is. John Cena's the Marine.
I still had it. I still had it. I owned every movie he was in, so I begrudgingly
I
bought
mean
that
it,
one
it
too.
it definitely is a movie that existed, so I do appreciate that. But again, this
It
is all the
definitely
build up
did.
for John Cena going to WrestleMania 21 as the challenger to JBL's WWE Championship. The reign of JBL's terror of the championship, whether you liked it or didn't like it, did its job. John Cena won on the grandest stage of them all. Uh, Me and DFD, Don't Fall David, who's a frequent guest on here, we talked about the WrestleMania 21 build with John Cena compared to Batista and Triple H, and it just kind of seemed like they were a little bit more focused on making Batista's moment than John Cena, because John Cena's match, it wasn't like a bad match. It was just more like very like this is SmackDown main event vibes, where it's like okay, paint by number stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. It's not. They didn't. It wasn't as big of a deal or as big of a match as it was put out to be and that everyone expected it to be. I mean, again, I still really enjoy watching him in the ring, but I by that time you definitely have gotten used to a certain type of John Cena match where you know, he
Mhm.
lifted up the Big Show 2 times on his
Yeah.
shoulder. That's a big man. You know what I mean? Like that. I'm sure didn't look easy, and so like you expect him to kind of go out there and just do what he does and
Hmm.
do some hardcore things. He doesn't always do top rope stuff, but sometimes he tries it. And it was very much like, mm, this could have been left off. This could have been, a backlash match or a Great American Bash when they did that match. You know what I mean? Like it definitely wasn't
Hmm.
a WrestleMania
They would
quality.
redeem themselves in the I Quit match at Judgment Day too, which was just a very brutal affair. You know, John Cena's like face just looked like Carrie from
So
the
good.
movie of the same name.
It one of my top 5 matches is that I Quit match because I've never really been a big JBL fan either. Not for any other reason, just because he's never caught my eye
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. So I've never been a big JBL fan, but that one was a that
Hmm.
that was a hardcore match. I really really enjoyed it. It's
It's really
in my
hard
top 5
because
for
I
sure.
don't like when they do hardcore for the sake of hardcore, but for something like that where it's like a passing of the torch kind of moment, and I do think JBL, even though he wasn't my favorite at that time, he was very important in that it could show that a veteran such as himself can have a successful reboot of a character and then have that success with that character is just amazing. And I'm just a big fan of how that match turned out. And then we're off to the races with John Cena getting
Oh
drafted to
yeah.
Raw in a draft shocker. And this is the point of the tale where we kind of we got to talk about it, you know, because this is where kind of the turn of
Yeah.
the crowd
Yeah.
happens with John Cena, like this 2005 era where it's like his in-ring acumen isn't as advanced as the people that he's facing. So you have Christian, you have Chris Jericho, you have Kurt Angle, you have Shawn Michaels, you have all these opponents during this calendar year of just people that people wanted to see those guys specifically as champion. And the problem is when you have
Yeah.
that, it's going to split the audience right down the middle. And when John Cena is in this type of matchups with all these guys, people are going to react very negatively to it. And this is the start of the let's go Cena, Cena sucks kind of era. And for me as a kid, because I wasn't online at this time, so I was just kind of confused by it because they were trying to make Kurt more of a heel. Like he had this like really out of pocket promo at New Year's Revolution that I'm not going to repeat here. It was just like they were trying everything to make Kurt Angle seem like a very, very bad guy. Yeah.
I
And
know
and it's
exactly
just
what you're
like they
talking
gave him
about.
Davari as his manager too. I actually did like the pairing of Davari and Kurt. I thought that was a fun pairing. but Chris Jericho left the
Oh my
company
gosh,
shortly
yes.
after Christian left the company. And I think John Cena gets a lot of unfair blame from people for that, where it's just like, oh, wait, John Cena, he's beating all of our favorites we want to see, and now they're no longer in the company, and this is the direction that WWE is going into. So, what were your thoughts on the audience's slow reaction to being anti John Cena?
Richie, I can't tell you. I was fighting for my life. Okay, like as a John Cena fan from like I would say '05, '06 to freaking 2010, 2011. As a John Cena fan, I was fighting for my life because like it was I you know kids are mean, and so like if anyone knows me, from my hometown, from my real life, what they know of me and like what they will say, like one of the first three things they'll say is that, oh yeah, she's a big John Cena fan, because like I am, and so I was always arguing with people. I cried so much because people would tell me that he sucked and that he wasn't good, and it would make me sad because I loved him and I wish that everyone
Mhm,
could see in him what I saw, because I saw all of it. The champ quality. He's always been my favorite, and so like there's never not been a time, you know what I mean? So for me, I was always just like, why
mhm,
can't you see how good he is? Why don't you see how entertaining why doesn't he entertain you the way that he entertains me? And I understand it a little bit more now as an adult, because like I'm able to look back and like even now with my own child, for like a long time there, I was a big Roman Reigns fan. He brought me back to,
mhm,
watching wrestling after I'd had kids. And so I was like, like, oh yeah, I'm all about the tribal chief. And then as my son started watching it with me a little bit more, he loved Cody Rhodes. He was all about Cody Rhodes. He loved the American Nightmare. He
mhm.
still does. He's a big Cody Rhodes fan. And so like would get so upset with me because I was rooting for Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? And he was like, "No.
Mhm,
Roman Reigns is the bad guy. Cody Rhodes is the good guy. And Cody Rhodes is cool and I
mhm,
want you to like him. Like please." And so like he tried so hard to convince me, and because of that I became a Cody crybaby, is
yeah.
what they would call me, because I love watching how excited he would get watching Cody Rhodes, and it reminded me so much of how much I loved John Cena as a kid, and how excited I would get when he would win, and how sad I would be when he would lose, and how upset I would be when
Mhm,
people didn't like him the way that I did. And so for him, I'm, a Cody crybaby now, because I want
mhm.
him to be excited the way that I was. And so it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard, and I threw a lot of fits because I had John Cena posters all over my wall, and like I still have his Word Life CD like in the case, everything. You know what I mean? It was really hard. It was really difficult because I loved him a lot and I threw a lot of fits. I understand a little bit why more now, because he was oversaturated. He just was, and he was, there wasn't a whole lot more competition for him around that time to be giving anyone else. I didn't think really anyone else needed the opportunity.
The oversaturation of John Cena has been well depicted. Once you're anointed by the company that, hey, this is our guy, and if you make it really super obvious that that's your guy, then the fans are gonna turn against you and backlash, especially when you're seeing people on the rise that you would prefer to be in that spot. We've seen it with Roman Reigns, we've seen it with John Cena, and of course with John Cena, you always have to have that villain to his, Superman, Batman. You need a Lex Luthor, a Joker, if you will. And at this time, I would say that Edge fit that mold because you had the hip hop guy in John Cena and you had the rock guy in Edge. Now, big John Cena back then. Did you think Edge was the perfect foil at this time?
It was the perfect duo that you could have had because their chemistry was just absolutely off the charts. And Edge was such a big heel back then.
Mm,
Not only because of like how he was portrayed in character, but because of the issues with Lita and Matt Hardy and all of that. And
mm,
it was a very public thing. So he was very much looked at as a villain already. So a it was one of the most perfect rivalries that they have, honestly. Especially with Edge going and beating up his dad. I mean,
mm.
how how much more personal do you get than going into someone's home and beating up their dad? I would be pretty upset. I would not be happy.
So a funny behind the scenes story of that is they record Edge going to John Cena's house, and John Cena's father is a manager in like the Massachusetts Indies, and he was very over the top, over the top, just saying, this, like, let me tell you, Shane, this is what's gonna happen here. I'm just gonna smack you in the face, and then you're gonna be nothing and put you over the edge. This little like carny mustache twirling thing. So when they showed the footage to Vince, it was Brian Gewirtz, who was the head writer, Bruce Pritchard, and Edge. And Vince is like, ugh, this is the worst thing that we've ever recorded in the history. And Edge is like, oh man. So Edge had to do roaming commentary over the footage to make it, I guess, passable and less over the top with with Johnny Fabulous, John Cena Senior. So
I
that's
mean, he
always like a
tried.
little like fun. So, yeah, it's like that's the
He was trying to
performer
put his
in
own
him.
spin.
Yeah, the performer in him. But my favorite John Cena Edge promo, and I want to see if you remember this. This happened like way down the line. I think this is like 2009, so we're like years in this feud at this point. And Edge just goes on this tirade about hating John Cena. He's like, I hate you, John. I legitimately hate you. Like, I hate your hat. I hate your shorts. I hate your shirts. I hate everything. I hate your sneakers. It was like the Kendrick Drake beef before its time. You know what I mean? like
Oh
it's
my god,
like it was just like I
that
just
was
hate
such a
John
good
Cena.
promo. That was such a good promo. And it was really like because he was just saying like you're corny and I think you're corny and everyone else thinks you're corny and so because of that, like I hate you.
It's like when people think of like John's greatest rival, I think they always come back to like three notable names. It's either Edge, Punk, or Randy. Uh Randy's out of it for me because I'm not sure about you, but like when I was watching the whole John Randy story unfold, I'm just like, we've seen these guys way too many times. Like we've seen them in one-on-one
Way
matches.
too
I
many
think about
times.
like 20 of them over the past like couple of years alone. And this is my favorite,
Well,
absolute favorite one. And I'll tell you why. Because remember bragging rights? It was like whoever wins, no matter what, the feud is over. They're never going to face each other again. Fast forward 2 months later, they had the Slammy Awards for Superstar of the Year, and it was like a tournament like setting. So then John Cena and Randy were in the finals, and it's like, well, I guess they have to face each other again. And my friend and I, we were texting, and we were like, I'm like, this is outrageous. I don't want to see this ever again.
ever again. Well, and it's funny because I was just listening to Randy Orton's interview that he did with Cody Rhodes. And he said that out of like all the people that he would want to do his retirement match, the top on his list selfishly was John Cena. He was like, I'm not gonna ask him. He has a lot going on, but like that would be the one that I would want my retirement match to be against. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can see why. I understand it. and maybe during the retirement tour, I might like to see it one more time.
Yeah.
Because if it's the last time for real, then it's the last time. But just once, and that's
The for
it.
really really last time. This time for
Yes,
sure. You
for
know, and
sure.
like Randy and John's feuds weren't bad. It was just I think at the time WWE wanted that Stone Cold Rock like rivalry, and they tried to manufacture it. But the thing is, you can't manufacture something by forcing these two as your top stars of the company. Like John was already there, but with Randy, with Randy, I would love for him to be like the top of the company. But at the
Yeah,
time, it was like they made the Orton rule for the wellness suspension. And if you don't know what the Orton rule is, it's a slang term where it's like when they had the wellness policy where you could take classes to work off one of your suspensions. So usually they operate
mm,
by a three strikes or out rule if you're caught with drugs. But you could take these classes in order to work off one of these suspensions. So they had that Orton rule. And Orton, for better for worse, they wouldn't really promote him like that. Just because I think it's just like he was very young at the time.
yeah.
Like if you think about it, he turned 30 at WrestleMania. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Was it WrestleMania 2010? Like that's when he was 30. So that's like when he had the triple threat with Ted and Cody. You know,
Oh yeah.
and he's already like vet status, you know what I mean?
You guys mentoring them.
But yeah, it was just like, it was just crazy because my friend and I we had like a big joke that it's just like, man, he's just never going to age. Like he is going to be a part of this forever. And
I
with
mean,
John, it's
it's crazy. It's
yeah.
crazy.
And I feel with John and Randy, they were so like I don't want to say like prim and proper, but it's kind of like I said, when you manufacture something and you don't make it natural. Like I feel like the '07 feud, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. They haven't fought before. And I liked it because,
Yeah.
like Randy punted Mr. Cena in the head. Not saying I condone it, but I'm just saying it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
there's this. I was actually at the Garden show. It was like a Saturday night's main event where Randy like RKO John on the chair, like on the
Oh
outside. So
yes.
yeah, I was in the building.
Yes. I remember that. That's
Yeah, I was
crazy.
in the building for that.
Oh my gosh. I've only been in his presence 2 times, and it was amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, John had like a lot of those, and with Punk, when Punk came later down the line, and it really elevated CM Punk to like this cult hero following. And you and I feel like we're on like the island to our own as far as like CM Punk fans in our
Yeah.
little group. And
Yeah.
don't worry, like I'm gonna do another one of these audio documentaries that I dropped on a week before on a CM Punk subject that I think a lot of people will either really enjoy or
Oh my
really not
god.
like. But with CM Punk, it's one of those things where it's like here's a guy who was ready for that top spot, and
Yeah.
John was the doorstop to kind of like opening that door into showcasing him. And that match in Chicago and Money in the Bank is probably regarded as one of the best matches. But for me, because I'm a nerd and I watch all their matches, my favorite match was at Night of Champions, where Punk came out in Yankees pinstripes. Like
Yes.
that's probably my favorite match of theirs, just because I was just like, oh, this is like so cool. Like the vibe's different, and like I'm okay with the non-finish. The draws.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know.
it it seems like a perfect the the whole entire feud with them was again one of those absolutely perfect pairings
Mhm.
because here you have John Cena who is it's a company guy. He's a WWE guy. He even says it. He's only professionally wrestled and he's only done it in OVW and WWE. Like
Mhm.
he's always been a WWE conglomerate kind of guy. And then you have CM Punk on the completely opposite side at this point. He's fed up with the company. He's fed up with management. He's fed up with not. people not getting the push that he thinks they deserve. And it was all really real and personal and raw. And like I think that those are the types of feuds and rivalries like it makes the best times
Mhm.
because you can feel the emotion. As a wrestling fan, anyways, like wrestling was very emotional, and it's okay to have emotions in wrestling. It's not like one subjective thing where you just have to be one dimensional all the time. And so, as a wrestling fan, for almost as long as I can remember, it's feeling those raw emotions is what makes sometimes like just the best rivalries, and that is one of my favorite rivalries that John Cena's ever done
Mhm.
by far.
So we cover the favorites, we cover the favorite rivalries, but we have to kind of acknowledge the opposite end of that spectrum. And talk about some of the least favorite rivalries with John Cena, because as much good that we've got, even when John Cena was at like his peak hatest, like hated,
Yeah,
with like I remember watching the ECW One Night Stand live when he was going through the Hammerstein Ballroom, and that iconic shot with him just raising the championship head down, just like trying not to get jumped by the audience. I,
oh
I
my
have I
god,
have to say my least favorite John Cena rivalry, in terms of I did not enjoy watching this on my television screen. Why am I watching this? Uh, it gets really close because it's around the same time period, and it's gotta be the embrace the hate storyline with Kane. That's probably my least favorite, because like one, like they were building Kane's like return up really big, and he had like the welder's mask,
yeah,
and I'm like, oh, okay, the welder's mask is cool. Then he takes off the
yeah,
welder's mask, and it looks like the fruit roll up mask on his head. I was like, oh, okay. And then it's like the embrace the hate. I'm like, oh, okay. And then like Zack Ryder,
oh
who
my god,
it's like, fun fact, I went to school, and Zack Ryder's brother was my substitute teacher, so
that is
had
so
all of that.
cool. I love
Yeah,
that
so it's like we would just talk
writer.
wrestling all the time. And if you're listening to this, man, thank you for being a great sub. Um,
Thank you.
but like they like didn't do right by Zach, and then the whole Eve Torres thing was there. That was just and this was the storyline before the Rock's like story. So this is the build up into the biggest story that WWE has done in years, and it's like this embrace the
Yeah,
hate of like John Cena like heel turn, and it's like, oh wow, we're actually going here. We're actually going to this point in time. We're actually going to see a heel John Cena, and then it never happened. And I'm like,
it never
you
happened.
gotta you gotta you gotta toy with my emotions with that. And the fun fact is if you watch Total Divas or Total Bellas, I'm not sure which show it was on. I think it was Divas, but there was a singlet that Cena wore as a joke with Nikki Bella, and it says "Fear My Name" on it. And that was the singlet he was going to wear because he was going to turn heel around this time.
That's crazy. I remember. I know exactly the singlet you're talking about. That's insane.
Yeah, because John, like the idea was brought to him, and immediately made new gear, made new entrance music, did like the hoodie, like he was gonna come out in like boxing attire, boxing stuff, like become like a really big heel. But
Mm.
the thing is, WWE signed a really lucrative deal with Kmart around that time, and you don't want to mess with the lucrative Kmart deal. And another thing is they didn't really have another face to take over the spot, so they were kind of like out of luck there. So it's just like we were like this close to getting heel John Cena, but we never really did.
I would have loved that. I really like. I would have. It's really something that I want to see, and I don't know if I will in his retirement run. But like, just a little taste
Mhm.
of like a real heel John Cena. I don't know if he's capable of it because he has been this babyface John Cena, for so long that it would be really hard
Mhm.
to break the mold. But it would be really something that I would love to see just because when he was trying to be a heel and, being Thugonomics, it was pretty great. It was, And I think that if they had done that, maybe the storyline wouldn't have flopped
Mhm.
the way that it did. Like if they had kept it going, it would have been something good.
Yeah.
But they crushed it.
Now, I said the embrace the hate story with Kane. Do you have any least favorite John Cena storylines other than that one?
I mean, I faithfully watch everything that he's in anyways, you know, good or bad. But I have to say that my and this might be a hot take, but his rivalry and storyline with Batista bored me. Bored me to sleep. Not for anything other than it didn't feel like there was anything genuine there. The matches were good. The matches were, really, really good because they can go and they did. I all I can think of when I think of those is Batista, or was it Batista? No, John Cena throwing Batista off of the ambulance.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is really all that I think about. But the storyline behind it, I could not. I could not get behind it. I tried really hard, but it was really just Batista being, complaining that John Cena was in the spot that he was in and he was under his shadow the whole
Mhm.
time. And in theory, it probably would have been great, but I just think the way that it was executed, it just made Batista look really whiny and not like the big guy that we got so used to seeing. And so I wish that because I feel like they could have done something else, because John Cena and Batista have been, friends for quite a long time, and him and Randy Orton have been friends for quite a long time, and so because they all did their training together and all of that, so it's like I feel like you could have added a little bit more substance to it, and they didn't. And so the storylines just absolutely bored me to death.
Yeah, I will say I do like the Hollywood Batista character because it was like so funny, and it did give birth to one of the gifts. If you remember the Mark Henry coming down the ring, and then Batista doing that big, exaggerated back bump. Like I was like, gave birth to that. But I agree. Like there was potential there because for so long, like we had Batista and John Cena at SummerSlam 2008, and that build was fine. And then we
Yeah,
got John Cena, Batista, legitimately three pay-per-views in a row. And you're just like, oh, okay, they're just kind of wrapping up. And then Batista legitimately broke his back in that last match with John Cena.
yes,
And
yes.
then we don't hear from him for 4 years. And it doesn't help that this was like the era of like my least favorite John Cena T-shirt. So it's like I'm always marred where I'm like that bright orange shirt with the blue stuff, and it's like I'm not a Met fan either, so I'm just kind of like I'm like oh god, it's like this
Yeah,
guy.
the orange shirt was definitely. I mean, I appreciate the rainbow, that he was trying to include all the colors. That was nice, but still, I did not like the orange shirt at
I
all.
mean, the Rock gave him a fruity pebble deal. You know what I mean? So it's like it wasn't all bad. And speaking of which,
I was really into it.
yeah, and speaking of which, like the Rock and John Cena feud, that's what I feel like kind of went into this era of like the quote unquote part timer era of WWE. And it was really like a big thing. And I know John said he regrets a lot of things that he said during that feud with The Rock not being there, this, that, and the other thing. But as like a fan, I think I was 18 at the time, maybe, like during that first John Rock match. And when John was saying it's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's not here, he's just kind of to plug his movie, raise his eyebrow, that's it. I'm just like, yeah, yeah, you're right. He's right. He's right. And screw you, Rock. But it's like, it is cool because The Rock didn't need to come back. He came back because, The Rock legitimately does like the business. Now, I might have a different podcast planned for a different subject with The Rock, but that's neither here nor there. But at the time, the John Cena Rock match was legitimately the biggest match you can do. Did you think like we would ever get this match, or is it like, yeah, it's just kind of a matter of time before we get this blockbuster, quote unquote, once in a lifetime match?
So when they first had teased it at that WrestleMania when he was the guest host, it. I was excited about the prospect of it. I was like, yeah, like this would be really cool. Because as far as I know, I don't really remember watching The Rock on
Mm,
TV. It
same.
was all stuff that I was able to find on YouTube, later on when I was just doing my doom scrolling in the middle of the night and just watching stuff. And so I was really excited to see The Rock. Like I think everyone was because he had been gone for a very long
Hmm.
time at that point. Like he hadn't made any appearances, nothing. He was just off doing his thing. And so it was really really exciting. But I wasn't sure if it was really going to happen because they do that all the time in wrestling. They'll do a little pop up, and whether there's any plans or not, you won't really know until it happens. When it started happening, I was very much on the other side of it because I don't like it when people talk bad about my goat, and John Cena is my goat, and it felt I had already thought that, and told like me and my mom had a running joke that she was on the Rock side because she grew up with him, and I was on John Cena's side because I grew up with him. And I would always tell her as my talking point that, well, he hasn't been here. He's not around. He's just doing movies and he's not showing up. He has no stake in the game or in the company. So like why is he gonna come and take from John Cena, who has been working his butt off for, a very long time to be the face of the company and to, he's the face of it. He's the face of the company. He brings the money, he sells the merch, he sells the action figures, he says hi to the kids, he kisses the babies. It's what he does. So I didn't understand why The Rock was coming trying to take his place. Now that John Cena is more of a part timer, I understand, a little more that it's like, yeah, whatever, do movies, it's not a big deal. But yeah, I was not on the Rock side, and I did not like that the Rock won. Only, I mean, I understand in the storyline, maybe they needed it to happen, but the fact that he had won that first match and he had the title, it didn't sit right with me. It never did. And it still doesn't to this day. I still don't think that he should have won it because he wasn't, it's the same reason why John Cena probably shouldn't win the title in his retirement tour because there, there's no uplifting anybody else in that
Hmm.
except for himself.
Yeah. Especially like after The Rock defeated John Cena, they tried to do this storyline where 2012 was the worst year of John Cena's career, and they blamed that like Rock loss on his divorce, which I was like, oh, okay, like you didn't need to go there, but
No, no,
I guess
not at
sure,
all.
why not? And then like it could have worked, but immediately the next pay per view he beat Brock Lesnar, and then he won Money in the Bank. He beat Big
Yeah,
Show. Dolph did win against him once, and then never again. And I was just
never
like,
again.
I was just like, you could have had something, have this as John Cena's
Yeah,
worst year of his career. But I'm just like, I looked at his
it
win
really
percentage not
wasn't.
too long ago, and I'm like, this is like the third or second highest win percentage of his entire career. So I was just like, man,
It's
I'm like, I'm
hilarious.
not sure if WWE got like cold feet of making John Cena into I don't want to say like a fragile character, but it's like something where it's like you need to see the flaws in him. And to be fair, like in his stories, like John Cena's not a great friend at all.
No,
Like I did like
no.
a video a while back with comparing Cody to John, and I'm like, the difference is Cody, like when he's like before champion and after champion, he still has friends. Granted, he's in a story with Kevin Owens right now, and usually that doesn't really end well. But for the time being, Cody has friends.
He
And
has friends.
with John Cena, it was just like, all right, who's kind of like the baby face that we don't want to really outshine John Cena, but it's like we'll just keep him there, give him the John Cena rub. I remember they did like an Evan Bourne John Cena tag match. I was like, all right, all right, go Evan, and then that never happened again. Like the consistency wasn't very, good.
No.
Good, it was very episodic where it's like, what's John doing this week? All right, and the next week, and then the next week, and of course, you could go listen to this in the Nexus archives on this on this very podcast where we talk about John Cena and the Nexus quote unquote burial. I will say John didn't say he wanted to go over on the Nexus. He just decided to make that SummerSlam match very very dumb.
And that's, again, I think that that's part of the reason why I can say that I'm a big Cena fan, because I can also acknowledge
Mhm.
that there's just, he's not perfect.
Yeah.
And there's just been times where he probably did the wrong thing.
Mhm.
I don't think that there was any reason for him to go over on the Nexus, and, you
All
know,
right.
but he did what he wanted to do, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that if he was given the opportunity now, his opinion on that might, be different.
Yeah. I feel like my feelings with John, like usually kind of like correlate to like what his ad tire is, and I'll explain. Because like I'm like it's like John Cena had the jorts on for a little bit. He had the jorts, but then he had like the camo like shorts. I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, like I don't hate it. And then like sometimes he would like throw in the tan shorts in there. I'm like, all right, this is getting really weird. It's like they were like khakis, but they weren't khakis. And I'm like, all right, we're back to jorts. I was like, all right, you gotta pick a lane now. I'm getting very, very, very uncomfortable with these attires. Do you have like a prime John Cena attire where you're like, this is the John Cena that I support?
It really has to be the Thugonomics John Cena, with the white, the white T-shirt and the chain, and the jorts and the sneakers, and sometimes the hat. Sometimes the hat. It wasn't always the hat, but I I have a very soft spot for, because he that was the John Cena I fell in love with. That was the John Cena that I remember, first ever really like holding on to in my mind. And so that will always be my all-time favorite. But I really did like the purple shirt also, because he never really did a pink shirt, and pink is my favorite color.
Mhm.
So purple was
Yeah,
probably the closest that we got.
yeah. I remember he did do the like the black and pink for the Susan G. Komen
He did do
deal.
that, yes.
I don't remember like a
I
strictly.
want just one that's hot pink
Yeah,
though.
like just like a like a Dolph Ziggler like pink shirt. And
Yes.
I remember this specifically because I was like, oh, that's BS. So they were doing the Sujin G Komen thing. So John's shirt was pink, or like pink colored, and Dolph had like the pink tank top at the time too. But he came out, or he had the pink shirt, like it's not showing off if you do it well or something like that.
Yes,
And then
yeah.
like it was like Night of Champions, and that's when they were starting their Susan G Komen partnership. And Dolph came in like the black T-shirt version with the blue lettering, and I'm like, oh, they're doing like the politic thing with like a partnership. That is wild. Like, at least that is my interpretation, because
Oh
it
my
it's a
god.
little sus that this man was wearing a pink shirt all throughout the summer, and then all of a sudden John Cena wears a pink shirt, and then Dolph wears a black version of the pink shirt he was wearing. Just saying, a little sussy.
I never noticed that, and now that you pointed it out, I'm gonna go look that up because I never even noticed that.
Yep. So go Night of Champions 2012. That
Okay.
is the show that it happens on, because Dolph faces Randy, and that's the John Cena CM Punk match that I was talking about earlier,
Yeah.
which I still think is one of my favorite matches that I've seen, because John Cena does like a tope through the ropes, and and I'm like, oh wow, this is a different beast right here.
They bring out the best in each other, and I have a lot of things that I want to see on the John Cena retirement tour, and I don't know if I'm gonna get all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But now that CM Punk is back in the company, they better do that. They better do that. I need it. I
At
need
least like
it.
an interaction or a tag team scenario, I'll be okay with.
Mhm. Give me something, like anything. Comes, I'll take them.
So with John Cena, a big thing that we didn't touch on was the U.S. Open Challenge, and what that was when John Cena won the U.S. title at WrestleMania 31. That was the first title he won in WWE some 11 years earlier, and the concept was giving a new talent to face John Cena, who is the face of the company at this point in time, a new opponent every week just to have like a little showcase, and try to up their stock and up their value. Do you think anybody in particular benefited from the John Cena Open Challenge?
I think that, to be completely honest with you, no. Only because none of them ever stood out to me.
Hmm.
None of them ever really stood out to me. It didn't feel like, to me it just felt like another Cena run,
Mm-hmm.
which, I'll take it. I love it. But it didn't feel like, I feel like maybe after that he he started to get some more momentum and bring people up, but I think that it's taken him some time to get there, to
Mm-hmm.
be completely honest with you. He was put in a such a high position for such a long time, and so getting out of that momentum might be a little difficult at first. And so I don't really think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a really good run, though. I think that he had a lot of good matches. I think that, you know, he shined the way that he always does, but I don't think that he brought anyone else up with him. And I don't think that I've seen him really bring anyone else up with him until, very recently. Until he did the stuff with, when he was doing the stuff with Roman Reigns a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think he still tore him
Mm-hmm.
down quite a bit. It's, you know, so it's really give or take,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. But like, I don't think that anything really stood out to me. So I personally don't think that he brought anyone up in that run.
For me, like I think a big one during that time was Kevin Owens because that's when Kevin Owens got called up. And I just remember like the finish of the match being like Kevin Owens, pop up power bomb 1 2 3 defeats John Cena. And I remember somebody had like fan cam video of it. Like Cena gets hit with a pop up power bomb, rolls out of the ring, and just walks to the back. And it's like the camera never like shot John actually like walking to the back like a normal person, but like I assume it was just to give Kevin Owens like his moment. Hey, you just beat the face of the company.
Yeah,
But I just like I
yeah.
can't get that image out of my head with just like John Cena just casually walking back after losing to Kevin Owens. Uh, but
Well, I mean, he had really good
mhm.
matches, but I don't think that
He didn't bring
Kevin
anybody
Owens.
up to the main event scene with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say someone that he solidified in that main event position was the year after was AJ Styles when he came, because AJ Styles' character when he turned heel on John Cena was beat up John Cena. That was the whole character. Loved it so much. That was his identity for a little bit. And it's like one of those matches because I was a big TNA fan when they were starting, and my friend and I would always have these discussions. I thought it's like, all right, if there's like one person we could bring from TNA, AJ Styles is that guy to WWE because he's just so good. And the
Oh my
matches with
God, yeah.
John were, for lack of a better term, phenomenal. But like not only that, it's just like it brought out a different side of AJ Styles that I don't think a lot of people saw, which was more of the character building promo side. And a fun fact about their Royal Rumble 2017 match where John won number 16, they never leave the ring. There's no fighting on the outside, there's no dives to the outside. Everything is in the ring, which I thought was really cool. But not to pivot to kind of a sad subject, John Cena recently announced his retirement for the year 2025. So, Michaela, please give me your thoughts, how you're feeling, what do you think's going to happen in John Cena's retirement tour?
So, how I felt about John Cena's retirement. Devastated is an understatement. I was so excited when he came out because it was a surprise. And like, I mean, you kind of heard that he was backstage, but you didn't really know if he was. And then he came out and I was like, "Oh my god, it's John Cena." I'm so excited cuz I love when he just shows up. And then I saw his little towel, and it said "the last time is now," and I knew what it was. I just knew it because he had had this conversation before. He had said that he, was going to retire by the time he was 50, and he's almost there. He's about 3 or 4 years away. So I knew that it was coming, but it did not lessen the blow. It did not make it any better. It did not make me feel any better about it. I was devastated. I cried. I absolutely cried. I could not, like, I was not in a good mood. And it's not because I want him to go until he can't. He doesn't want to be what we would consider Ric Flair is now, and go, 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 go until you can't, and everyone's watching you embarrassed knowing that you can't. But it still makes me really sad because he's my goat, and I love him very much. And so I love knowing that he could come at any time. Now knowing that that's gone and that chance is gone, yeah, it makes me really sad. I'm happy for him, and I'm happy with whatever he decides to do afterwards. He did say that he signed an extension, which I assume would be like a Legends contract. So like he already has like an extension after his retirement tour, but it won't be the same. And so it's like it's honestly my childhood's dying. And that's okay. That's fine. It still makes me really sad. So, but good for him. He gets to do it on his own terms. Not a lot of people get to do that. And, I'm happy that he gets to go out, choosing to go out.
I could definitely see that perspective, Like for me as well, John Cena was a big part of my introduction to the wrestling fandom with the Doctor of Thugonomics. And it's kind of surreal that we're getting an entire tour that it's kind of building up to this moment. Like you said, John Cena, he wanted to be done by the time he was 50, and now he's almost to that age. And it's almost like a sobering reality that nothing lasts forever in wrestling. So it's pretty cool that the company is allowing him the opportunity to have an entire tour for the rest of next year. And a little bit of a funny story, like when John Cena came out, me and my friend, we were watching DFD, Don't Follow David. We were watching Money in the Bank, and we were watching it on a delay because we just started later. And he gets an alert on his phone, ESPN, saying that John Cena announced his retirement, and we are like, "What?" And that this is just as John Cena's coming out, and the rally towel saying, "The last time is now," and it just kind of like doesn't hit you right away, but I feel like the next year is going to be a lot of processing of those, coming to terms where it's like, all right, it's finally done. He's riding off into the sunset. So I couldn't be more happy that he's able to end his career on his own terms, unlike so many other people who don't have that opportunity. So it's pretty cool that with somebody who a lot of people refer to as the greatest of all time is getting that Tom Brady like send off, and hopefully it will be one of the best send offs that WWE's ever done. But we're just about to wind down now, so Michaila, can you please let everybody know what's going on in the world of the Ring Queen? What do you have coming up? Please, as they say, the floor is yours.
Okay, first, I just want to say thank you so much, Richie, for having me. This was a pleasure to record, and I had so much fun recording it with you. I'm really excited that I get to be on the podcast that I already listened to. Unironically, we're friends, but I listen to it anyways. I would listen to it no matter if we were friends or not. So I'm really excited that I'm on it, and I'm also really excited that I'm your first John Cena episode. That is so cool. I'm Michaila the Ring Queen. You can follow me on Instagram and on TikTok. I post a lot, a lot of stuff about wrestling. I'm also a mom, so sometimes there's some mom content in there. And I love Rhea Ripley and I love John Cena, so I post about them a lot. And I'm sure this retirement tour, I will be posting about John Cena on a consistent basis. Um, and you follow the Familia. Please, please, please go follow everyone in the Familia. Richie's in there. Pro Wrestling Wizard Doug is in there. 216 Bonnet Bitch is in there. Chrissy Tina, Pat the Wise Man, Hot Take Wrestling, BC, Shayna Hill. Follow all of our Familia because we all make amazing, great wrestling content. You can also buy our merch. We all have merch at runtheropes.shop. My discount code is RingQueen15. I don't remember everyone else's, but they are out there somewhere in the universe, so you can find it and you can go buy some of our merch. And yeah, and of course, follow the podcast, Retold and Relived Wrestling with Richie Mars. It's the best podcast out there as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, have a great day and watch wrestling and love wrestling and don't complain about it.
I couldn't say it any better myself. Now, you already did my outro for me. Jeez, I don't even know what to add to that. But yes, Wrestling Retold and Relive by Richie Mars. It's on every Tuesday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. New content every day on the TikTok and the Instagram at Retold Richie Mars. TTFN, ta-ta for now, and we will see you next time.